I have worked with coaches and practitioners who share very personally in their public writing. And I've found myself, it's not distracting to me. It's really easy for me to feel as the client or as the participant to feel clear that this person has their own story, this person who's helping me. And the fact that they are pretty grounded and healed in that particular story means that I'm not worried about taking care of them when we're working together. This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schuessler. Before I share the replay of this open coaching call, I want to tell you, Wednesday, April 2nd is the last day to sign up for Create Your Program in 2025. Do you have a sense of what having your own program could do for your career? If you've been sitting on an idea for a while, or you just know that you would love to have your own program, I want to invite you to create your program with me. This is the process where you take your strengths as a therapist or a healer and you create a program so that you can serve more people from anywhere, make more money, and get your best ideas and processes out of your head and into a unique container that you're going to be able to offer over and over again. We go through an 11-week process together, step by step, so you're actually launching your program during our time together with my support and the support of the other people in the program. Go over to rebeltherapist.me/create to enroll now, and this is your last chance to enroll in 2025. So I ran a free and open coaching call recently for everyone in our audience, including past clients, current clients, and listeners. And we had such a great conversation that I decided to share this recording with you. Here it is. All right. I have 9 questions that are so good that were pre-submitted. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into those and be riffing on those. If you don't know me, I'm Annie Schuessler. I am the host of Rebel Therapist podcast. I'm a business coach and a healer. And what I do is help people create and sell their programs beyond a traditional private practice. So that, and well, mostly because people are asking me, that's what gives me the authority to answer these questions and give my opinions on them. So I'm just going to go for it. If you have a question, put it into chat. We may have time to answer your questions as well. And you may have submitted a question if you're here live. And just like huge welcome. I'm really excited to be with you. All right. So the first question. When I start to think about a program I'd like to offer, my immediate thought is I have no good ideas or I don't have anything valuable to share. What advice do you have for getting past this block and tapping into an offering you feel confident and clear about? Okay, so the first thing I would think about doing is some kind of parts work. And notice the part of you that's saying, I have no good ideas, I have nothing valuable to share. Find out what that part of you has to say. Find out what it's worried about, what it's concerned about, or what it's afraid of. And then once you've really heard out that part, see if it would be willing to move to the side a little bit, just for a moment, to let you have some ideas. You're probably here, or you probably submitted that question because you actually have some really, really excellent ideas. And so once that other part has moved to the side a little bit, take some time to let those ideas percolate without any editing. When we try to edit our ideas or judge our ideas while they're coming up, it really just blocks the flow. So see if you're able to let some ideas come and allow them to be terrible, like in terms of like things you wouldn't actually do. And then I want to give you a few prompts to try once you're in that state of not judging yourself, not judging your ideas. Try on these prompts and see where they go. So the first one is, I wish I could. The next one, if I had permission, I would work with. My younger self could have used a program about. If someone wasn't already doing it, I would create a program for. Those are some prompts that might get that flowing for you. And give your brain the assignment of coming up with ideas. and allowing bad ideas to come in. And they may come in at unexpected times, and just be ready to jot them down. And then you can sort through those ideas and get to tweaking that niche so that at that point you can start thinking about and getting help with whether it's a viable niche. But don't edit while the ideas are coming. All right. Our next question is, I'm curious about how you help support therapists in being visible. As I've been thinking about offerings and writing my newsletter, I sometimes get stuck on how much of my own story to share, which is also why I'm compelled to develop outside of therapy to feel more whole professionally. I'm worried how therapy clients might react to knowing I've gone through a difficult experience, for example. Okay, so I would say start by writing in your newsletter exactly what you kind of wish you could write if you could say anything with zero filter, and see what you wish you could say yourself, and also what you feel like would be really helpful to someone who might find your writing, even if they're someone who never ends up working with you. And then you're going to see some similarity to the last answer I gave and this answer, actually. And then you can decide from there what you feel comfortable sharing. And in terms of sharing things publicly, like sharing in your newsletter, my advice would be to start really small, and then things that you feel absolutely comfortable sharing, and then sharing a little bit more and a little bit more as you're comfortable until you hit that edge, and then see what happens to that edge. But don't be in a rush. So as I've been developing a workshop for people who are estranged from a parent or a caregiver, and I ran this workshop once so far, I've gone through that process. And the step I decided I was comfortable with for now is just to say, I'm in that position myself. That's my story, without yet going into the details. And like that edge may move as I go forward. And as I continue writing, I just lean into my own experience, and then I edit out anything I'm not ready to share yet. I've worked with coaches and practitioners who share very personally in their public writing. And I've found myself, it's not distracting to me. It's really easy for me to feel, as the client or as the participant, to feel clear that this person has their own story, this person who's helping me. And the fact that they are pretty grounded and healed in that particular story means that I'm not worried about taking care of them when we're working together. So your clients might have that feeling too. But yeah, I would say take it slow. If you've gone through a difficult experience and that particular experience feels healed enough that you could comfortably talk about it, and like if someone brought it up in a session and said like, damn, I didn't know you went through that, that's a lot, and that you'd feel comfortable in that conversation, I think that's also a good sign. And make yourself the priority to go slow and take care of yourself in that, so that you can also be sure you're available to be like a regulated person if the client wants to talk about it. And then I also want to say, like, in my opinion, it's totally okay if you're not the right therapist for everyone because you're sharing openly out there. So just to try that on as well. Okay, the next question. How far in advance should you launch the promotion of the event or class that you're going to run? And so I would say, let's say you're going to be running an event, you're going to be running a workshop, you're going to be running a multi-week course, whatever it is, I would say at least a month. You want to start promoting it at least a month ahead, maybe even a bit more. So you want to pick your start date and then have a week between your start date and when you end registration. So that like if you close registration on April 1st, let's say, you don't want to start your workshop or your class until like, let's say April 8th, so that you just have a week and they have a week to chill out, get any questions answered, get it on their calendar, that kind of stuff, get onboarded. And then you want to have 1 to 2 weeks of having registration open where you're reminding people this is the time to enroll, this is how to enroll. And then I think it's also good to have a couple of weeks at least before that where you're answering people's questions and letting them know it's coming. And before that, if you have more time than that, you can be raising awareness and growing your audience. So if you're really excited to do it, I would say do it a month from now and use the rest of that time to get people educated about it so that the right people know it's for them. If it's your first time running this kind of a thing, you're going to be filling it with the people you already know and maybe the people they know. So you're not worried at this point about like letting everybody in the world know about your offer. That's for later. You're just like excitedly telling everyone who you already know and asking those people to also share it with everyone they know. All right, we're like zooming through these questions. So the next one, I participated in your Create Your Program a few years ago and narrowed down on an idea for a workshop I want to develop. A year went by and I had to leave for a sabbatical year abroad. And during my sabbatical year, I did 3 presentations on a topic for my workshop as pilot offers. These presentations broadened my perspective on the topic, which made it difficult for me to narrow down an angle of the workshop I'd like to develop as an initial offer. I'm also trying to get adjusted back to the rhythm of my private practice and my life back in the US, and I'm finding it difficult to carve out time for the next phase of workshop development. So thank you so much for submitting this, and it's so nice to hear from you. So you didn't exactly ask a question, so I'm just going to throw in what I think could be helpful to you and for other people in a similar situation. So it's so fantastic you've been already running workshops, and I also hope you've been using those to grow your audience. And if not, do that from now on. That's for you and for anyone. Anytime you run a workshop, make sure you're getting people's email addresses as they sign up for the workshop so that you're able to stay in touch with them. I would say you could ask people directly who attended those workshops, and or you could be observing in yourself what seemed to be the most important to them, and you could direct your pilot in that way. Like you've gotten a lot of information from having run these workshops about what landed, what people wanted more of, what felt the most alive in you. So I would let that direct you. And I would say you are not alone in that it's really difficult to carve out time and energy and space for this project on top of a private practice. And what most people who I've worked with have said to me is that they really need some deadlines, like telling people, hey, this is coming and this is when it's coming, and people to work alongside. So I would recommend for almost everyone either creating a little accountability / co-working group. And you can also, as a grad of CYP, you can go through CYP again if you feel like that would be supportive in really getting the accountability and the support and questions answered. And as a grad of CYP, you get half off as an alum. So that's another option for you. And just remember also to reach out to people from your cohort who you made a connection with when you went through it. And you can also just see, without paying for CYP again, you can just see who's available for like co-working or accountability, especially if you say like, this is what I'm working on, who else has a deadline? But thank you so much for that. All right, the next question is, with the economy quickly changing, how do we factor it in as we choose which program to create? So even though I've seen this question a few times, I want to take a breath. So I want to encourage you to take a breath and then I'll answer it. So, at every time, and then especially now, it's important to choose something that is incredibly important to the participant. And that's really how we can kind of recession-proof our work. Choose a problem that people are really urgently trying to solve and that they care about a lot and that they're expecting to pay money to solve. So you're going to create a program where you're going to be showing up and interacting live with participants. I think at all times, and even more, people are very resistant. Many people, not everybody, there's exceptions to everything. People tend to be resistant to paying very much for just information, no matter how well curated that information is, no matter how valuable that information is. People tend to feel more trusting of themselves that they're going to get more out of it if they also get to work live with the person who put this information together and has put this process together, even more important. I think so many of us have experienced purchasing even a really good course and just not doing it. And so the opportunity to get to work directly with you through a process is a huge part of the value. So those are some things. Pick a really juicy niche and show up to deliver the program. Okay. We are so going to have time for your questions. If you're here, I was thinking like 9 questions that are so juicy. This is a lot, but if you're here live, do submit questions into chat and I'll have time to get to some of them. All right, the next one. How do you support therapists who feel like they don't know enough to take action? I'm constantly taking and consuming courses, which has kept me from creating. So I think most of us have imposter syndrome. Most of us have parts that feel like we're not quite good enough. We're not quite ready. We're not quite worthy enough as a therapist or a healer, or maybe just even as a human. And we need one more certification in order to be good enough, in order to be worthy. And I'm all for trainings. Like I'm into training programs right now. And I'm really excited about that. So I am not saying there's anything wrong with doing one more training or doing 18 more trainings. And in creating your program, you're going to be integrating what you've already learned, which is a lot, it's a ton. And you're also going to be integrating what you do naturally. And that's a really different process than learning more. So this is much more of an integration process usually than like learning one more thing. So I see a lot of therapists who already have way more than enough to offer, who are thinking they need one more certification. And really what perhaps they need is a process to integrate what they know and to turn it into a program. So once you start creating your program, you're probably going to see that you need to actually simplify and pare down what you want to offer people rather than that you need more. Shiny object syndrome also can make us feel like that thing over there is the thing that we should be doing. That seems to be working really well for that person. Maybe we should go over there instead. And most people I work with find that their really unique life experience is a huge part of what makes them the right person to create the program they're going to create, and that they probably don't actually need that shiny object. So I've been thinking about this a lot lately because, as I said, I just am into new trainings that I'm excited about. So what I did was really checked in with my body to find out where the desire for another training was coming from. Was it like the excitement of learning a new tool that I like can't wait to work with people with this new tool? That's awesome. Or is it this urgency that's maybe kind of designed by capitalism or by other toxic forces that's kind of designed to make you feel like you're never enough? Like, where is it coming from? And to notice that in your body. So if you're having this felt sense, like, yeah, I've got amazing stuff to offer, and I think there's this other one thing I also want right now, then that's great. All right. Our next one. I have a few ideas for programs, but I get stuck narrowing it down to one idea. Do you have any tips for focusing my program? Yes. The first question I would ask yourself is, which idea feels most alive for you? Because your energy for it, your excitement for it is going to be one of the most important things to pull you through the entire process of creating your program and then talking about your program with people and then running your program and then doing that again. So what feels most alive for you? And then I would ask, that's the most important. Then I would also ask, which program is most clearly an important problem to solve for the participant? And it's really a need to have, not a want to have. It's not something you would need to convince them that they need. It's rather something they're already walking around looking for. And you could also ask yourself, which program might be the easiest to market? Are there people congregating in a particular space who have this problem? That would make it something really easy to market for. Are there podcasts you could guest on around this topic, or at least adjacent to this topic? Are there other professionals who are kind of waiting to make this kind of a referral? Then that could also be a factor. And there's a lot more. That's a lot of what we do in the first 2 weeks of my container Create Your Program, is walking through a process around this. And that's also a place you can get my brain on your niche decisions. Okay, and the next one, do you think it's best to wait till I have a fully formed program idea to start the coaching group, or do plenty of people figure it out along the way? Yeah, plenty of people who go through Create Your Program figure it out along the way. I was just looking at, of the people who have already signed up for this next cohort of CYP, I would say about half have a fairly formed program idea, which might change, but that's already fairly formed. And then the other half are in process about like, what is the topic going to be? And of the cohort that I'm ending next week, that is ongoing right now, I would say about the same was true, about half and half. And everyone has niche clarity at the end. Or I would say like almost everybody has niche clarity at the end and is in the process of launching their program and starting to get it out there this week and next week. So yeah, it absolutely. I don't see a correlation years and years of doing this between like, if you come in and you don't have an idea that ends up being a problem. I don't see that. Because for many of us, having a structured container that's supportive to walk through this process with is going to like really move you forward in getting your ideas formed. And the next one, I am pretty set on my ideal client and have a sense of how I want to structure my program. I get most caught up with the tech that I think is involved with putting something together and out into the world. Landing pages, funnels, CRMs, it's all so foreign to me. And then I think, why couldn't I just start slow and manage it all with an Excel spreadsheet, email, and Venmo? Yeah, you can. You could do that. I want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of that. So I'll use myself as an example. When I recently ran that workshop for folks who are estranged from a parent or caregiver, it's a different kind of offer. And so I used different tech for it. So I had a spreadsheet to track who had signed up and their contact info. I had a registration page. I had a payment checkout process on the registration page. I used a Zoom account, and I used my regular email using BCC. That's very important, of course, using BCC on any group emails. And I could have done it without a website. I could have done it with a doc such as a Google Doc. The stuff that you're going to want eventually in your business to have in place is a little bit more robust than that. So in CYP, we walk you through a process step by step to build a really simple Squarespace website that has exactly what you're going to need for growing your program and building your business. And so you see exactly how to set it up, like step by step. And you also have instructions on how to set up a proper email list so you can grow your audience from jump. And we also show you like exactly how to collect payments. So we keep the tech really simple and we teach you how to do it. And the advantage of doing that is so that then you just have those structures set up for yourself going forward, especially I would say like being able to grow your email list from the very beginning. That's the regret when I've talked to entrepreneurs. That's the regret that I hear most consistently is I wish I had started an email list right away. So in CYP, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I didn't set you up with how to start growing your email list from the beginning. And yes, you can go even more simple for your first run. Absolutely. And I also just love the spirit of this question of, can I just do it? If I were to only say one word as an answer, I would say, yes, you can just do it. All right, I'm going to take a moment and welcome. If you have showed up since the last time I welcomed people, I'm really excited that you're here. And I'm going to look at questions now and pick one to start with. Okay, let me just riff here. I will start with this question. How to gain traction to get signups for my program in new markets outside my local area where I'm better known? So you're going to be running your program. Well, I can't tell you what you're going to do. I'm going to recommend that you're running your program online, which means you could work with people from anywhere. And so you're still going to, the first time you run it, you're just going to tell everyone you know about your program, especially your colleagues, especially therapists and healers. And you're going to ask for introductions if it's in a niche where there are people who you would like to know, but you don't know yet. You're going to ask for those introductions. And you're just going to, with a lot of enthusiasm, invite people to your program who you already know. So this is like a relational launch. You may end up having a lot of people signing up for your program who are the clients of your closest colleagues, or they might be your colleagues themselves. You're going to be serving the people you already know and just usually one layer out. And then from there, to gain traction, that's a bigger process where you're going to be looking at how do I get new people to see my work over time. And so you want to have a strategy to keep growing your audience. That might include being a guest on podcasts. It might include doing free live events where you are sharing those with everyone you know. And then as you grow your audience, there are more people who can be sharing your work. So I think of it as kind of like two steps. One is just selling your pilot, getting it started. And then the next step is growing your audience. And then the next question, first steps for transitioning from therapist to coaching. So coaching is an unregulated field. And so the way you become a coach is you say, I am a coach. So that would be your first step. And if you have questions, which most people do, about like, well, if I have a therapy license and I want to step into coaching, how do I protect my license as I do that? And that is a whole world of answers that usually start with it depends. And it's going to depend on your license. It's going to depend on where you're licensed. And in terms of business strategy, I am awesome. But in terms of legal advice, I'm a jackass. So I refer all these questions to a lawyer who comes in and works as a teacher in CYP. And yeah, you're not alone on having questions about like how to do that safely. And the lawyer who we work with, she's an attorney and a therapist and a coach and a consultant for therapists. And her name is Brandy Matthews. So you can also look her up as a great resource. Okay. And next, I'm creating a curriculum for my program. Awesome. Do you have suggestions on ways to road test the material? I worked with 2 clients for free, which was a good first step, but they weren't my exact ideal avatar. What are some ideas? Workshops? Just go ahead and launch a pilot program? I'm stuck. Yeah, that makes me think you're ready to launch that pilot program. And that is where you've already done it. You've already workshopped this stuff. You've already gotten a lot of information about what's working, even if they weren't your exact ideal avatar. I imagine you got a lot of information about kind of pacing and if there are concepts that you were teaching, like how those landed. So I would just go ahead and I know you're a grad of CYP. So I also know like, yeah, you are so ready to take the next step and to be like, I'm an early adopter. I love to be part of a new program that's running for the first time. And in doing that as a participant, I always see the creator like noticing what's working, noticing what could be working a little bit differently. And when they're willing to just speak about that out loud and be like, I realize I think I should have taught this before that. I'm seeing that y'all are a little bit confused. Let me make an adjustment. That's beautiful and it works really well. So just stepping in, whether it's the first time you're running it or any time you're running it with that sort of humility and flexibility, I think works really well. Perfectionism is just a lie. Okay, the next question. I'm a somatic trauma therapist. How to coach without doing that work? If I see trauma as an aspect of the client's stuckness, can a therapist switch to trauma coaching? So yeah, I think we're getting into the stuff of the legal expert. But what I will say, I have noticed that she says every time she answers questions like this is the difference between therapy and coaching is not necessarily what it looks like as it's happening. A lot of it is around like what legal protections are in place for someone who's in therapy, which is different than someone who's in coaching. And so really knowing a bit about the protections that are not in place for someone who you're coaching, that would be. And then, of course, I think we always hear that as a coach, you're not going to be working in the medical model. You're not going to be diagnosing or treating a diagnosis. And trauma, okay, let's just say like my opinion is trauma is something that we are all helping each other with, whether we're therapists or we're plumbers, we are all in the world of helping each other with trauma. So I wouldn't be willing to not use that word in my work. All right. And our next one, a grad of CYP, loved it. Thank you. I want to shift to offering my program to businesses. However, it's been 20 years since working in corporate space. I'm not sure where to get more comfort selling myself to work within businesses when I haven't done so in so long. Okay, so this is something I have not done myself well, I guess that's not completely true. I have worked with a therapy center before. But what I have learned from people who have done it is that you probably know this better than me, like it's all about the warm introduction. I actually did a podcast episode with Femily. So if you want to look up Rebel Therapist podcast, Femily, she has great advice on how to kind of take your work and think about, like, for the decision maker at that company, what's in it for them, which is probably going to have something to do with like profit or retention or the kinds of words that we're not really thinking about when we're offering things to individuals. So thinking about what's in it for them and then selling it in that way, which may actually not change the work you're doing at all. That's something that Femily pointed out. The work you're doing might stay exactly the same, but the marketing might look different, the way that you do your messaging, and that it's going to be all about finding someone who can introduce you to that decision maker and to be relentless about that process of getting in front of the decision maker. Yeah, and I've seen people do really well with that. Okay. Great. And people are giving each other good advice about like keeping the coaching and the therapy separate, which is often almost always a really good idea. And it's always a good idea to just make sure whoever you're working with has zero confusion about what program they're in with you, what kind of work they're doing with you. Something in CYP that's just built into the process is your program, because it's going to be niched and it's going to be structured and it's going to be time limited. It's already very different and it's very hard to confuse with therapy in that way. Okay. What are the benefits to transition from therapist to a coach? Pros and cons. Yeah, it's so interesting. I just interviewed a grad of CYP for Rebel Therapist podcast, and they were answering this question for themselves of like, what happened? And they said when they went into wanting to transition some of their work into coaching, they thought it was because they wanted to make more money. And they knew that working with people from everywhere would give them an opportunity to sell a group program that could serve people all over the world, and they needed to make more money. And then they found out that they actually did it because they needed more reach. They had a message that needed to get to more people. And now they're running like 3 groups a week and working with people from all over. And they wouldn't have been able to do that as a therapist and work in the way that they're doing. And they're not working under their license at all anymore. So I think that would be an example of the biggest advantage for most people is about location, being able to work with people from anywhere. And if you're someone who is like kind of an innovator, you want to be able to run your work the way that you want to run your work, the way that you see it's going to be most helpful to people, you might find that there's certain kinds of flexibility in not working under your license there too. And then the cons that come up for me right away around working as a coach is you have certain protections around confidentiality. As a therapist, for example, you can take insurance as a therapist if you want to. I never did, but you can absolutely, like, that's not probably going to be open to you as a coach. And staying in just one lane and just working under your license, there's a simplicity to that. So those are some of the pros I can think of just staying in that lane. Like these questions we've been talking about, you wouldn't have to even find out what the answers would be to these legal questions if you just work under your license. All right, next question. How do you decide the value of your course and how to go about pricing your offer? I like to think of this in 2 stages. And one is, what might I want to charge for this long term? And in that, you can look at your time, like how much time for you goes into this offer, including everything that goes into creating the offer and running it every time, and looking at to offer it in a really supportive way for people and to give them everything that you know will be required to make this a great program, what do you need to make and what do you need to charge so that you can make that much? So like looking at kind of reverse engineering it and being like, I could do a really awesome offer if I limit it to this many people and if I make it this many sessions. And so you kind of create the offer that you know is going to be incredible. And then you also look at what do I need that to pay me? So that can help to define how much the offer costs long term. And also looking at like, so that's like one stage of it is like, what might I charge for this long term so that this business will really support me? And then the other stage is like, okay, that's cool, but what am I going to just charge for it this first time in its simplest form where I haven't run it before and I don't want to put a ton of pressure on myself. I want to create something and know that people are getting a really good deal, that they're getting way more value than what they're paying. What's that just first pilot price? And they don't have to be the same, what you're going to charge long term and what you're charging for the pilot. So for the pilot, I usually recommend because depending on what you're creating, it's probably going to be pretty robust. It's probably going to be a lot of you that you're offering. Make it more than $500. That's like usually my first advice is like make it more than $500. And then from there, it's really going to depend on you, who your niche is, your comfort level, and even your reasons for doing the pilot. Your reasons for doing the pilot might be 95%. I just want to get my feet wet and get paid for testing out this offer. Or it might be more like, no, I need to really make money on this very first round of the offer, then maybe you'll charge a bit more. So those are some of the things. And we have a whole module on pricing or some lessons on pricing in CYP. And I get into it in more detail with people, but those are just some of the things to first think about. Most people end up in CYP charging somewhere between, it doesn't have to be in this range, but usually people end up charging somewhere between $500 and $1,500, maybe $2,000 for their pilot program. But again, you might have a niche where like you got to charge more than that. We don't know. And our next question, what are your thoughts about specific coaching training in moving into doing coaching? I was, I think, in your first CYP program, hello, and pilot, and I did your previous program for building my practice, which was a game changer for me. Awesome. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to see you. Okay. I did some coaching training myself when I was moving into business coaching, and I had just been a therapist, and I love learning. So I got a lot out of it. I loved like thinking about the work in a different way, but I also realized I really didn't need it. Like that maybe I needed it just to find out what was there, but it was a little bit like the Wizard of Oz where she figures out at the end she had what she needed. So I think going through a process of creating what you want your program to be might give you enough of what you need to kind of transition in a different way of working. And also getting to hear our lawyer experts say many times, like, coaching and therapy don't actually necessarily look that different. You might actually be using many of the same exact tools. I think that also was a light bulb for me and for many people. So I'm not in any way against coaching training programs, and many people find that they don't need them. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Any more questions before I start wrapping this up? If you're listening to the recording and you have a question for me, definitely email me and ask me at info@coachingwithannie.com. I may be able to just answer it for you. And of course, if it's something about your decision of whether to sign up for CYP or not, of course, I will answer that question. And I just so appreciate you all being here and asking such amazing questions and just being so present. And I've been seeing like your nodding and your presence. And so, yeah, you're an amazing group. Oh, yeah, here's a question. In CYP, do you concentrate on developing a signature program first and then other products? Yes. Great question. One thing at a time. This is so hard for me. This is so hard for, I think, many of us who could be doing so many different things and are excited about so many different things. really just picking one project and developing that program, you're going to learn so much about what works. And then you can build other things from there if you choose to. But having like a simple business that doesn't take a ton of infrastructure behind the scenes, like having a simple business is so powerful and it makes your life so nice. So I really recommend starting with one program. And then, of course, you'll find out how complicated you want your business to become. And, you might not want to put the pressure on yourself to know it's going to be your signature program. It might be, it probably will be, but you could also trick yourself into creating something awesome by just saying like, I'm just going to create something. I'm just going to create something awesome and we'll see where that leads me. All right. Thank you, everybody. Okay, remember to enroll or learn more. The last day to enroll is Wednesday, April 2nd, and you're going to go over to rebeltherapist.me/create, and I can't wait to see you inside. I want to thank Ames Palms for editing this podcast. If you found this episode supportive, please do a couple of things. Share it with your favorite therapist or healer. That is absolutely the most important way we reach more people. And if you haven't already, please hit follow and give us 5 stars. That is so helpful to this podcast. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.